gets a little notification. Cool. All right. Welcome everyone to the April 2026 Power BI for Enviro's session. For those people that are new, big welcome. For those people that are regularly dial in every month with us, nice to see you again. So for those people that aren't fully aware, our mission here in this sort of virtual environment, virtual meetup group, is we really want to find an opportunity for people to be able to share case studies largely using environmental or water-based data sets that are relevant to a lot of the people on the call. Allow people that dial in to learn new tips and tricks about largely Power BI, but other sort of data visualization or data management solutions that people want to present on, and really focus on empowering enviros or environmental professionals on their Power BI journey. So welcome. Just a bit of general housekeeping. So as a courtesy to Ruxandra, our guest speaker today, can you please just mute yourself when not speaking to give respect to her when she presents. We just had a bit of a chat before as well, and she's happy if people do have questions, depending on what you're most comfortable with, you can either write it in the chat or there'll be different whole points and then you can come off mute and ask directly. So whatever you're sort of most comfortable with. And as we've already had a few questions in the chat, this session, as a reminder, is being recorded. So it will be shared afterwards via these different links for those people that are watching this at a later date and want to dial in later. Just as an acknowledgement of country, so I'd like to acknowledge the Bibbulmun people as the traditional owners of the land from which I'm dialing in from today here in Perth, Western Australia, and pay my respects to the Whadjuk people, their elders, both past and present. And also just extend that acknowledgement to the traditional owners from where you're dialing in from, be it across Australia or the Indigenous people from the different lands that you might be dialing in from internationally. In case you're new, I'm Christian. I'm one of the co-founders of Discovery Eye. So we really focus on creating Power BI solutions using environmental and water-based data sets. So the sort of areas that we work in is as shown here on the screen, and we sort of sponsor the event through the Meetup platform every month, and try and arrange the different guest speakers and the really interesting case studies for people to be able to share through this forum. So yeah, if you need more information from us, you can just have a bit of a look at our website. But on to like the main event of today's session that you've all dialed in from. So what we're going to be looking at is narrative-driven Power BI. So how to design cohesive reports, tell a bit of a story through the use of visuals, functionality, and the way you want to present your data. And we're really privileged to have Ruxandra Villa, sorry, your surname, I don't know how to pronounce it.
It's Villot, but it's actually no longer that because I got married meanwhile, so I had to change my last name. Oh. So let's just stick to Ruxandra.
Ruxandra, okay, we can do that. Congratulations. So have Ruxandra joining us. And she's going to talk about her climate change, unequal responsibility, shared impact Power BI report. So the session will showcase really the importance of structuring this Power BI report around a clear audience-centered narrative rather than a collection of disconnected visuals. So it'll explore the storytelling challenge that we all face as Power BI developers, of working with metrics at different granularities, such as country level carbon dioxide emissions per capita versus global temperature and sea level trends. So how to connect them responsibly, and I've just bolded here because I think it's an important line, without implying misleading cause and effect relationships. So it'll also be a session highlighting the use of normalization and lagging techniques to support meaningful comparison and trend analysis. So some of what will be present in terms of the way that Ruxandra tackled it might be applicable to your own, data visualization, Power BI based work. So special attention will be given to explaining the visual design choices in the report. Ruxandra is a Power BI developer in the IT services industry with 7 years of experience. And this report is one of the 2026 finalists in the Global Power BI Data Viz World Championship. So congratulations, Ruxandra. And I understand that is the competition still going, or did it have a completion at FabCon most recently? Kind of lost Ruxandra, if she's still there. Hello? She did say she was having some internet issues start. So hopefully she comes back to us. But for those people that are still on the call, if you did want to have a look at the report, there is a link directly either in the meetup page or via, I'll paste it in the chat as well, for those people that are interested. This is Roxandra's Data Stories Gallery publishing of the Power BI report that she'll talk about today. And there's also an opportunity, if you are interested in diving deeper into this one, downloading the PBICs, as well as obviously reading a little bit of the idea behind it and sort of what different criteria needed to be met as part of this competition that she was involved in. So Roxandra, you're back. I think you froze just for a moment.
Yeah, I was actually able to hear everything you were saying.
Okay.
You can hear me, right?
Yeah, you're back. It's all good.
Yeah. You were asking about the competition. Yeah, it ended at FabCom. I did not win.
Okay,
It was Gus Bavia who won. I encourage everyone to look up his report. It's actually amazing what he was able to do in Power BI. And if I didn't know, I would never have guessed that it's created in Power BI. It's really amazing.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And Daniel's just added Gus is based in Australia as well. So there you go. Cool. Congratulations to Gus. That's really cool. But yeah, without further ado, Roxandra, I'll pass it over to you. I'll stop sharing and let you sort of take the session from here.
Yeah, thank you. I do hope I won't be frozen anytime soon due to my internet connection. If something is not working properly, please just let me know. I will stop. I will turn off my camera at some point again, just for the sake of my internet connection.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very, very much for joining this session and for inviting me. As Christian was saying, my name is Roxandra, and I've been working with Power BI since 2019. So that's roughly 6-7 years. I've been working with Power BI within the IT services industry. So my area of expertise is mostly ticketing data, but also internal data that's kind of relevant to any company. That would be financial data, HR data, operational data, and so on. Now, when it comes to Power BI, I mainly work on all fronts, so to speak. So I develop reports from start to end. That includes the requirements gathering part. So basically talking to people, understanding their needs, or what it is they want, what data we have available. Also the backend part. So basically connecting to data, transforming it, processing it, setting up the whole data model together with any additional columns or measures if needed. And lastly, obviously the front end part. So the actual design of the report with all the charts, colors, and everything that's in there. Now I don't have advanced UI UX knowledge, but I do have some basic principles that I use to guide myself in when developing reports. It's actually quite basic, and it's something that everyone could use. Like, for example, colors. Don't overwhelm the user with way too many colors. We're not designing a children's playbook here, so it needs to be simple, professional. Choose, 1, 2, 3 colors that make sense for your company, your brand, or for your story, whatever it is that you're delivering, and stick to that. Also use proper padding, leave enough white space in between visuals or in between the title and the actual margin of the chart. Again, leave white space in between the charts, give the report some room to breathe. Use the right chart types. For example, if you're interested in showing a trend, use a line chart, not a bar chart, because it's easier for the reader to kind of visualize and understand the trend.
Sorry,
if you're interested
Roxandra, just 2 seconds. Were you your screen's not sharing? If you were supposed to be sharing screens, yeah.
No, not yet.
Just talking to it. Cool. Yeah.
Okay, I will be sharing my screen soon, but not at this point.
Sorry, thank you.
So I was saying use the right chart types. Again, if you're interested in comparing categories, don't use a pie chart, use a bar chart instead. And that's because when you have more than 2, 3, 4 categories in your data set, it gets a bit difficult to see exactly which slice is bigger than the other inside the pie chart. While if you stick to a bar chart, then it gets a bit easier to see the actual ranking and the actual difference in between categories. Don't use complex chart types such as a violin chart just for the sake of diversity. It's fine if you can build your whole report around bar charts, column charts, line charts. As long as it gets the job done, and the reader has an easy time sort of understanding what you're trying to deliver within your report, that's perfectly fine. So you don't need diversity when it comes to charts within your report. You mainly need clarity. Again, don't overcrowd the page with too many charts or too many KPIs, too many numbers, too much information. Just try to keep it simple. And as I was saying previously, give the report room to breathe on every page. Also make sure to use relevant titles. So don't just default to whatever Power BI is giving you, such as sum of value by year. It doesn't tell much. It doesn't say much for the end user, for the reader. So just make sure it says I know, revenue by year or revenue by month or whatever it is that you're showing. Use proper wording for titles. And the same goes for tooltips. Sometimes when we develop reports, we give some technical, so to speak, names to our measures. And then, of course, those names pop up in tooltips. It might not be very useful for a first-time reader or for any kind of user that is using the report. So just give relevant names to all measures and columns in your report, so the reader has an easy time, so to speak, understanding what they're looking at. So as I was saying, these are some, basic principles on how to polish your report once it's already done and once you actually know what you're about to build. The more complicated part is happening before that, when you have to decide what it is that you're trying to build, what message you're trying to deliver to the end user. Christian, I see you've turned on your camera. Is there something wrong on my side?
No. I just
No,
thought
okay.
rather than looking at all the blank avatars, you might see someone else. This is really good so far. Thank you.
That's nice, actually. It's nice to see someone here.
It's all good. That's great. Yeah, please continue.
So as I was saying, what I was talking about previously are mainly, some basic small principles on how to polish your report. But the real work, the more difficult work, happens before that, when you start deciding what kind of structure you need, what kind of charts you need to use, basically what message you're trying to deliver with your report. And for this part, I always guide myself around 2 major principles, and these are actually going to be the focus of today's presentation. One of them is knowing your audience, and the second one is structuring your report around the clear narrative. When I'm thinking about the audience, I'm actually thinking about who's going to read my report, who's going to use it, on a daily basis or just one time. For example, when we're talking about financial reports, if you develop financial reports for, the CFO, for example, most probably he's interested in, the big picture, some major information, a few KPIs, so he can understand, the big picture. If you're developing reports for middle managers within finance, most probably they need some more detailed information, such as revenue on a project at the project level. At the same time, if you're developing financial reports for accounting, I'd say they need as much data as they can get. So maybe even raw data. So again, think about your audience, how much details they need, which direction you're going into. Are they interested in details or just the big picture? Do they need data dumps, so basically the raw data, or just some summaries? If it's summaries, how detailed the summary needs to be. It very much depends on your audience. So whenever you need to take the audience into account, feel free to talk to the people, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who should be guiding the direction of your report. Now, when it comes to the second principle, so basically structuring your report around the clear narrative. Now, when I say narrative, I don't mean it in a movie sense. So you don't need to have like an actual introduction, an inciting incident, or some disruptive moment as it happens in movies, and then the action unfolds, and at the end everyone lived happily ever after. It's not about that. So we're not doing movies here. We're not doing like actual stories. Instead, what I mean is that you should have a process-driven approach. So basically try to try to think about the process that your audience is going through. Basically, what is their mental model? If we go back to the finance example, finance people generally think in terms of revenue, cost, profit. So, feel free to structure your report exactly in this direction: revenue, cost, profit. Don't start with the cost and then going to the profit and then, hey, let's analyze the revenue, because their mind simply doesn't work in this way. Or again, if we look at engineers, they mostly think in terms of input, process, output. It's quite a general presentation here, I know, but just try to think about what your audience is going through in their daily job, and try to help them as much as possible by simply following their task structure. In this way, you basically reduce the cognitive load, because the end user is already used to thinking or to looking at things in a certain way. And when you kind of replicate their process, it just makes it easier for them to follow what you're trying to deliver. And at the same time, it also builds trust, because it says to the end users that this person knows what I'm doing. This person knows what I'm looking for. They understand my needs and everything else. So I can trust the report that I'm looking at. It's not the only requirement for building trust, obviously, but it's a start. Before I'm going to share my screen, I do have one final mention regarding these two principles. As you can see, they mainly have nothing to do with Power BI or any other data visualization tool for that matter. I think it's something that's generally applicable in any kind of analytical context, knowing your audience, and trying to structure something around a clear narrative or around a clear process. So it's not Power BI technical knowledge. It's mainly knowledge or principles on how to build something, whether it's in Power BI, Tableau, PowerPoint, Excel, or whatever visualization tool. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Now, the report I'm gonna present is part of the Power BI World Championship, as Christian was saying. Just a bit of information: there were 3 rounds within this championship. All of them were individual, so you could basically participate in one of them or all 3 of them. So there was absolutely no connection in between them. Each of them had its own data set, its own challenge. So that's about it. I participated in the second round. That was the one with the climate change data. So there were, and each round had a specific winner. So 3 rounds, 3 winners, plus a wild card. So basically a 4th winner that was selected from any of the three rounds. The four of us participated in the finale, which happened last year, almost last month. Sorry, not last year, on 18th of March, if I remember correctly. I did not win, but as I was saying previously, I do encourage you to look up Gus Bavia. He's the winner, and his report is absolutely amazing. So feel free to check it out and get inspired. Now I'm gonna share my screen, and I'm gonna show you a little bit the data, so you kind of get an understanding of what it is that I've been working on, that I've been working with. So we had three tables. One of them is with CO2 emissions per capita, and this data is at country level. I've just selected some random country here. At year level, so we have data ranging from, again, it depends on the country, but I think the minimum year was 1800s something. So for each year, for each country, you get the annual CO2 emissions per capita. Then we had some data on temperature anomalies. That this basically means what's the temperature difference relative to a baseline. So if we filter by, let's say 2025, there was a 0.8 difference in temperature compared to the baseline. So basically, compared to the baseline, the temperature has increased by 0.8 Celsius degrees. And then in a similar manner, oh, and I forgot to mention, the temperature data is globally. So it's not split at country level or any other level, it's global data. And the same goes for the sea level data. It's global data, and just like for temperatures for a certain year and also month, you basically get the difference compared to a baseline. So basically, compared to the baseline, the sea level has decreased in this case by 107 millimeters. So that's the data that I was working with. Now, if we are to go back to our, just one second. If we are to go back to our principles, I'm going to turn off my camera again, just for the sake of my internet connection not breaking.
Yep. And sorry, just Roxandra, there was just one question while you're talking about the data, if you don't mind at this point.
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
Just Jivan asked in the chat how much of data cleaning was involved as part of the competition or the project for this report.
Not much, to be honest. I think, if I remember correctly, I had to rename some countries, I think.
Mm-hmm.
No, not even that. No, honestly, not much.
Yep, data
So,
served as is. Cool.
Other than just adding some measures, some custom columns, there wasn't much. Also, there wasn't much data available to begin with.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why there wasn't much data cleaning involved in this report.
Yep, perfect. No, thanks.
Was there any other question?
That was all for now. Yeah, no, it's good. Thanks.
Oh, okay, good. Now, if we are to go back to our two principles, knowing your audience and using the narrative-driven structure or process-driven structure, let's talk about the audience for a little while. And it was given by the championship, so it wasn't something I had to assume. Basically, they said that within the audience, there are going to be some journalists, policymakers, climate researchers, sustainability teams, global stakeholders, mainly within this direction. So if you think about our climate change report, what does it actually mean in terms of audience? What do they care about? Well, I'd say they care about accurate facts, impact, and clarity. So, make it easy to understand, but again, be very accurate, especially when we're talking about climate researchers. It's accuracy they care about. When it comes to language, I'd say be precise, but also accessible. Use technical language because, it is a somehow technical area, but don't be too technical if it's any help. So, basically use a language that a non-technical person can easily understand without annoying a specialist because your language is too plain. I hope that's helpful. Also try to use a neutral tone, so avoid drama-like wordings such as the planet is on the brink of collapse. Don't do that. Be professional instead and use facts rather than a dramatic tone. Then think about signal versus noise. More information doesn't necessarily mean better reports. So, don't give data dumps. Don't overwhelm the reader with way too much information. Just try to focus on the main facts instead. Also, don't imply correlation or causation unless proven. Again, if we're talking about climate researchers or any kind of researchers for that matter, if you try to imply correlation or causation without actually proving it, you're going to lose them completely, because this is actually what they care about the most. Can you prove what you're saying or not? If you can't prove it, but you're still making statements, then you're going to completely lose your audience and the trust of your audience. And lastly, if there's any uncertainty or missing data, mention it. Be upfront about it, because in this way you're building trust. You're saying, hey, I know my data is not perfect, I know my data is not complete, but here is what I've managed to work with. So that's pretty much all about the audience. And then the second principle, designing or choosing a narrative-driven structure, process-driven structure. Now, there were a few challenges here, and the main one was actually trying to find the right structure. I have absolutely no experience with climate change data, so I had no idea where to start, what to build, and what's the angle I want to approach. So what I did, I simply went online and Googled climate change research articles. And what I found was that most of them have a common principle or a common process. Most of them start out with the idea that CO2 emissions are increasing and rising into the atmosphere, which in turn is increasing the temperature, which in turn is melting the ice, and then the sea level is increasing. That's kind of the biggest or the main angle principle that I found in all the online reports. So I've decided to use the same approach. So basically, if climate researchers think in terms of assigning a cause, so to speak, so CO2 emissions, and then what's the effect? Temperatures are increasing, sea level is increasing, then why not follow exactly the same approach in my report? However, there was a bit of a challenge even with this process, because I can't really prove correlation or kind of assign blame or cause, so to speak. And that's because my data is on CO2 emissions per capita. So not at country level. I cannot calculate the total country's impact, but rather only the per capita values. Now, of course, I could have added population data and then calculate the total country's impact, but I didn't want to do it because I wanted to kind of, accept the challenge as it was. Because even in the real world, we don't always have all the data that we need. We don't have perfect data. And at the end of the day, we just have to, work with what we're given and try to make something out of it. So I've decided to just, present the picture on CO2 emissions per capita as it is, and then talk about the impact. So basically, how temperatures and the sea level are increasing, but without implying any kind of correlation in between the two. Now I'm gonna the actual report and the design choices. And again, if at any point you have any kind of questions or comments, feel free to jump in. So the report is built around 3 chapters or 3 parts. The first part is the current state. So basically what's going on with CO2 per capita emissions at this very moment. Then the trajectory, so basically a little bit of historical information on how emissions have changed across time. And lastly, what's the collective impact or the global consequence in terms of temperature and sea level increases. Now, for the very first part, the report opens with a world map. So basically, the CO2 emissions per capita for every single country, or almost every single country within the globe. Now, we're talking about a global issue here with data across nearly every country on the planet. So the first question in the audience mind is naturally where? Which countries are the biggest emitters? And for this specific context, a table would make you work for the answer. So you basically have to read it like row by row and read numbers and read labels and in order to try to get some information. On the other hand, a bar chart would give you a ranking, what's the order of the countries in terms of CO2 emissions per capita. But again, the bar chart would kind of strip away all the geographic context. So in this case, a map is answering the where question instantly. You don't need to read labels or scan rows because you just see the pattern in seconds. If I scroll down a little bit more, yeah, you get to see the legend as well. So, there are some deep colors clustering in certain regions, then there are some lighter shades on some other parts. It kind of respects the audience time and matches the way they already pictured the world in their head. However, in this case, the map does have a blind spot. If you look at the legend, you'll notice that the countries with the highest CO2 emissions per capita are supposed to be in a sort of orange reddish color, but when you look at the map, you don't actually see it. And that's because it's Qatar that has the highest emissions per capita, but because it's such a small country, you can't actually see it. But if you do zoom in here, yeah, you get to see it. Now, of course, we don't expect end users to zoom in with this precision. So this is why I've implemented 2 buttons, one for the top 10 and one for the bottom 10 emitters. So if you click on either one of them, you get the map with the top 10 emitters together with the bar chart. So you can actually, see what's the actual ranking in between the top 10. And then, of course, the same, but for the bottom 10. So that's, that's what it is on the map. Basically, you get the geographic context from the map and then the precise comparison from the bar chart. Basically together they cover what neither of them could do alone. And then at the bottom of the map, you see a text box that kind of takes it one step further. As you can see here, Congo has the lowest emissions. It's 0.5 tons per capita, while Qatar, as I was saying, has the highest emissions, 41 tons per capita. So the question is, what does this actually mean to someone? Because numbers at this scale are a bit difficult, are a bit hard to feel. So the report is translating it. Qatar versus Congo is not just a numerical gap. It's the difference between hours and years. If you look at this sentence right at the very end, a citizen in Qatar emits as much CO2 in 11 hours as a citizen in Congo does in an entire year. If you put things into context in this way, it kind of changes the perspective, and it gives it even more meaning. You kind of feel the comparison, and you feel how big the difference it is in between the two countries. Even better, rather than just comparing 0.05 to 41 tons. It doesn't say much, but when you switch the perspective a little bit and give the users something they can understand a little bit better, comparing hours to 2 years, it makes a really big difference. Okay, and then below the map, there's a bar chart which kind of zooms out to continents. So the map was showing us the country level picture, while the bar chart is zooming out to continents. In this context, so within the bar chart, you get to see the actual ranking and the scale, while the global average line, so the dotted line in the middle, gives you the reference point. So the global average line at 4.7 tons kind of splits the chart into two worlds and gives some context. Some countries are below the global average, and then some countries are above the global average. So that's all on chapter 1. So basically, chapter 1 was giving us a snapshot, the world as it stands today, while chapter 2 is asking another question: How did we get there? What's the history behind the current picture? And
sorry, Roxandra, it's Christian. Just before you move on, it's fantastic sort of description and visualization as part of part 1. There was just a question before we move on, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Ruben asked, how did you get the insight description? Was that calculation based or built into the data? Was that like a measure that you brought into a dynamic text?
Right?
Yeah, I think it's the key insight sentence.
Yeah, it's so basically this is the HTML content visual, and it is, if I remember correctly, it is dynamic. So yeah, it uses DAX, so basically variables to calculate what's the highest country and what's the highest value, and then of course at the same time lowest country and lowest value. So if you do change the year, for example, and go to, let's say 2020, you see the numbers are different. So we used to have 0.05, now we have 0.04 with 36 tons. Again, the countries are the same, so it's still Congo and Qatar. I'm wondering if it's the same if we change the year even more. So yeah, the countries are changing as well. So it's the HTML visual with measures behind it. So actual variables that are changing based on the context.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And yeah, some nice complex looking DAX as well. I know Daniel Patrick on the call is actually the custom visual author of the HTML content. So he's just put a link to the visual in there. So great use of it, and well done, Daniel. Just another comment as well that was coming through. You mentioned before about Qatar being the largest emitter, but also a small country, so it's hard to see on the map. Was that a bit challenging when you were looking at it on the map and trying to think, how do I visualize that, because it is hard to see? I know I like the bookmark button solution of top 10 and bottom 10, but did that take a bit of process internally for you to okay, how do I want to best represent this from a geographic perspective?
Yeah, it was actually a bit of a challenge. I didn't think about displaying the top 10 and bottom 10 from the very beginning. I was actually quite, proud and satisfied
Yeah.
with the map.
That's
I
good.
felt like it's the perfect way to visualize the whole globe at once.
Yep.
And then at some point I realized that my legend is going all the way up to orange-ish red something, but the
Yep.
color is actually not visible on the map. And
All right.
I was really confused, like what's going on? Why isn't the color there?
Yep.
So, I started looking up at the raw data, trying to understand why is red not visible on my map. Initially, I thought that maybe I did something wrong with the colors or with the calculations.
Yeah.
And then I realized why it's actually not visible. It's because the country is so small that you simply can't see it when you zoom out this much. So, of course, I had to, fix it somehow, because you can't have a legend that goes all the way up to orange, but have no orange in your actual map. And that's why I've decided to also display the top and bottom 10.
No, it's great, and I like your little loose use of icons as well for each of those. Sorry, do you mind if we just go through a few more questions?
Yeah,
In the
absolutely,
chat?
absolutely.
So just general question. Someone was asking, how long did the report take you to complete? Yeah, just start to finish, rough estimate. What do you think?
Around 1 week.
1 week
The
to complete.
round two of the championship lasted for 1 week.
Yep.
Of course, I didn't start designing the actual report at the very moment. I think it took me, 2-3 days to explore the data and find an angle,
Yep.
and then I used the remaining time to actually design the report.
Awesome. No, it's great. And just the last one, I think you won't need to show it again. Someone asked, could you share the DAX HTML content code again? But from my understanding, people can go into your data stories gallery and download this PBIX and explore it for themselves. Is that correct?
I'm actually not sure, because I did try to download the reports from the other participants to see their work, and I actually wasn't able to do it. But how about I send you the report? Is there any platform where you could upload it and then people can just go and download the report
Yeah,
and look at
if you're
everything?
comfortable doing that, of course, yeah, in the sort of blog and recording completion after this, I can include it as a document if people want to download, as long as you're comfortable doing that, Roxandra. That would be
Yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely.
Cool. Okay, great. And I think that answers the questions and discussion. So no, that's great. Please continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we were at chapter 2. So basically, how we got there. What's the history behind the current state. Now, for this, a line chart is the only honest choice. When your data spans almost 200 years, you're not showing a ranking or comparison that's just way too complex. But instead, what you're showing is movement, and movement needs a line. But at the same time, almost 200 years is a long stretch of time, and asking your audience to kind of make sense of it all at once is quite a lot. So what the chart is doing is what I was doing. Was I added some vertical dotted lines that kind of split the chart into significant historical periods, because this gives the audience a mental map of the journey. So instead of just staring at 200 years of lines of data, they can kind of read the line chart split into chapters. And again, the global average here, the global average line is here to put things into context and make comparison across continents a little bit easier. Right below, there's a heat map. If you look at it, it's basically the same data, same periods, same continents. So as I was saying, same continents. The chart is again split within the same period. But the heat map has a completely different reading experience. The line chart is great for following trajectories, while the heat map is great for spotting patterns like instantly. When you look at it, your eyes go, straight to the orange. You can see North America being orange most of the time, while Africa and Asia are almost always blue, where blue means, like low emissions, high and reddish orange means higher emissions. Then I have a bar chart on the Paris Agreement. Basically, how emissions changed before and after the Paris Agreement. So basically, given the Paris Agreement, is there any improvement? Is there any change in emissions? But again, these are CO2 per capita emissions. So basically, we've spent time looking at almost 200 years of history, but this chart is zooming into something more recent, more relevant, and maybe even more actionable. As I was saying, what actually changed after the Paris Agreement? Have countries reduced their emissions after the Paris Agreement or not? Now, the bar chart is the perfect choice here because, the whole point is direction. Who went down, who went up, relative to zero. In our case, not up and down, but left and right. The Paris Agreement comparison here feels like the natural choice for this comparison because I'd say it's the moment where the world kind of collectively and formally committed to acting on climate change. So measuring what shifted since then isn't just analytically interesting, it isn't just some random choice, but I'd say it's the question that the audience is already asking. We have the Paris Agreement. We know what was agreed at that point. Has anything changed meanwhile? So that's basically the question that the bar chart is trying to answer. And then we have chapter 3. Are there any questions, Christian, or can I move to chapter 3?
No, I think if you want to continue on, and then we'll pull the questions at the end for both parts. That'd be great.
Oh, okay, awesome. So chapter 3 is looking at the collective impact or the global consequences. And when I say global consequences, I mean what happened in terms of temperature increases and in terms of sea level increases. So we have two bar charts here, both of them showing how temperatures have changed across time, and then the same how the sea level has changed across time. Now, the two bar charts, one for temperature anomaly, one for the sea level rise, are both relative to the baseline. So in this case, it's a bar chart with a zero baseline, which is, a clear way to show deviation. You immediately see whether a year is above or below the reference point, and then the color, does the rest. Blue below, red above. And then you have a trend line like layered on top, which kind of removes the year by year noise because there are indeed quite a lot of bars and quite a lot of years here. So the trend line kind of reveals the direction of travel. It's quite clear that the temperatures have been increasing in the last roughly 200 years, and then the same for the sea level. Now, for the last chart, a line chart again. What I'm trying here is to observe if there is a correlation in between temperature and sea level data. Now, I was saying at the beginning that most research articles on climate change focused on the idea that temperatures increase, ice is melting, and then in turn, the sea level is increasing. So what I'm trying to achieve with the line chart is exactly this, showing the correlation. Is there, if any, is there like a real correlation in between temperatures and sea level, yes or no? Now, the issue is that we cannot plot numbers of different units, so that would be Celsius degrees for temperatures and millimeters for the sea level on the same axis, because it simply won't give us anything meaningful. So the solution here is to normalize the values. So basically you convert them from Celsius degrees and from millimeters to a common scale from 1 to 100. And you do this so that you can observe how they move together. Now, ideally, if there was a perfect correlation in between the two, you would see the two lines perfectly overlap. So basically they would be on top of each other. That's obviously not quite the case here. There is some correlation, but I wouldn't say it's perfect correlation because the lines do not necessarily overlap. That's one thing that I've managed to do with this chart. So that would be normalization. And the second thing that I want to mention is lagging the data. The thing is, if we really go around this principle, so temperature is increasing and then sea level is rising, this is obviously not happening from 1 month to the other or 1 year to the other. So if temperatures are increasing today, we're not going to see increases in the sea level tomorrow. There is some delay here. Maybe it takes 5 years, maybe it takes 10 years to see an actual response from the sea level. So that's why I've decided to lag the sea level data. And I've lagged it by 10 years. To be completely honest, I've tested with a 5-year lag, a 10-year lag, and a 15-year lag. And it was the 10-year lag that kind of gave the best correlation. So basically the lines with the 10-year lag, the lines were getting, as close as they can get. So in other words, if you look, at this specific year, you get the, within the tooltip, the sea level rise. This is actually not the value from 1940, but it's the value from 1950, so 10 years after that. And then, some small information at the end of the report. A small conclusion, what each part was delivering, what was the message, and then lastly, at the very end, some information on data sources and some disclaimers. Again, something that I've been insisting quite a lot during the presentation. We don't have total emissions at country level, but rather per capita emissions. So within the report, even though we talk about what the global consequences are, we can't really, assign blame. We can't say this country is to blame, this country is doing the best, and so on, because CO2 per capita data doesn't mean total impact. So it's just something that I wanted to highlight once again at the end of the report, so it's clear to everyone that you can't really make connections in between the CO2 data and the actual consequences data. So that would be temperature and sea level rise. And I'd say that's pretty much it about the report.
That was fantastic. Thanks, Roxandra. I really appreciate you sort of stepping through and talking about each part and the different visuals, and also, the reason behind it, and therefore what sort of insights or like information you're able to glean coming out the other side. Were there any other questions or any questions? I got a few myself, but without hogging it, is there any questions from anyone on the call for Roxandra in relation to visuals, ideas, or just other techniques you might have illustrated here? Feel free to come off mute if you want. No, just a question. I think you used for part 2 with the vertical sort of splitting up of the time period in chapters. I think you used the analytics pane, was it, for like x equals? Yeah, for those ones. Have you found that like analytics pane? I've sort of had some issues in the past, like things get a bit buggy, that renames itself. Did you have any issues like that, or it was pretty simple in this example?
No, I'd say it was pretty simple. There were indeed a lot of clicks here and there, renaming all the lines, choosing the colors and everything else. But otherwise, no, I'd say it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah. For those people that are relatively new to Power BI, like you can use that analytics pane exactly how Roxandra's demonstrated to show, in this example, you're using, to show different periods of time. We've used it for like showing guidelines or thresholds as well. You can sort of play around with it, different things like that. So yeah, if you are unfamiliar with that. Nigel's just written a comment, said, great report with a lot of information. Is there anything you would have done differently if you were doing it again in terms of approaching it, maybe?
Good question. I'm not sure about it. To be completely honest, I've just, submitted it and then parked it somewhere, and then that was it after one long week of work. I haven't thought about it, to be completely honest. I did try to, turn the angle quite a lot and try to find different ways of, displaying the data.
Yeah.
But to be honest, the data set was not very, it wasn't very big. There weren't so many things you could actually do with it, I'd say. So
No, I
I'm not sure. I haven't thought about it. Do you feel there's something you would have added, but I'm missing from the report?
yeah, Nigel, if you want, you're welcome to come off mute. If you had any thoughts around it, for sure.
No, I was thinking the same thing. You sort of, as you work through it, you have different ideas and pulling it together. And then when you step back and look at it, you can sort of think, I'd do something different. So no, that's a good answer.
I just adding in as well. I think there was a comment earlier. I actually quite like the vertical scrolling nature of how you've done that. Quite often, maybe we'd be looking at each different page to represent a part, but then you miss that overview, or how part one might inform some of the outputs from part two. So I haven't seen too many of the vertical scrolling based dashboards, but I think in this example, Roxandra, it's very effective. So no, big kudos.
Thank you. I'm actually not a fan
Oh,
of reports that are
maybe
that
that's
are
what you
this
would have
long.
done differently.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
No, I actually chose the long style because when you think about the audience, we're mostly talking about non-technical people. So basically people who maybe have never opened a Power BI report. So when they do it for the first time, if you make it feel like an app, which is an absolutely amazing way to develop Power BI reports, I totally support it. But within this context, if you give it an app feel, it might feel a bit too complicated, to navigate around. Maybe somebody clicks a button and then they have no idea how to go back to, whatever it is that they were reading previously.
Yep.
So when you go with a website, so to speak, feel, and all the user needs to do is scroll up and down, then it just gets easier for the audience to actually consume the report as it is without worrying about the technical details.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Public eyes, people with different sort of understanding, both from a web tool interaction perspective as well as a technical perspective. I think, yeah, you're right. The scrolling does make it a bit easier.
Yeah, but there is actually one thing that you need to take into account if you choose to develop reports within this style. This report is something that I've created once, submitted it, and then end of story. There's absolutely no maintenance here. There aren't going to be any changes here. But in a company context, maybe you need to do some maintenance. Maybe you need to change some things around. Maybe you need to add something right at the top of the page, which means you have to move every single element down the page. It takes a lot of work to rearrange stuff on a page that's so long. So even though it has some advantages, make sure to think about the disadvantages too, which are quite a lot in this case.
No, that's an excellent point. I know we're nearly at the end of time. Is it okay if we maybe go 5 over just for a few more questions, Roxandra?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, sure.
Someone was asking, would the slides and video be shared later? Yeah, that's for me. I'll share the link in a moment. Someone asked, often when HTML content visual is mentioned versus using native visual, speed and page load are mentioned as cons. Did you find that the case with using the HTML content visual?
In this case, no. There aren't so many HTML visuals here. I think it's only these two, and this one, maybe it's no, it's still an HTML visual. So there aren't actually too many visuals. Also, the data set is very small. So within this context, I had no performance issues. But indeed, from what I've heard, from what I've read online, when you have way too many HTML visuals, and maybe the data set is too big and you have
Mhm.
maybe quite a lot of pages in your report, then you might run into some performance issues.
Yeah.
But in this
And-
case, luckily, no.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think Daniel, like I said, Daniel's on the call. He's the creator of the HTML content visual. So I won't get you to talk more to it, Daniel, but he could provide a very technical reason for this stuff, as he says in the comments. But we'll hold off for that, Daniel, just a moment. But yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, for anyone that's starting up, you've got all your core visuals there that are available in that visualizations pane. There are all this plethora of custom visuals outside of the core visuals. Each pros and cons. Some of them are fantastic, really, really good. So there's just things to consider based on your visual selection. And I thought the narrative you described as you're working through the report, Roxandra, was very good. There was another question. Someone asked, how come the data was capped at 2024 down the bottom? I think you've got the slices at the top. Does that apply like a max year to those visuals in part 2, part 3? Does it interact with that one?
Maybe. I think the data is kept at 2024 because
Was it? Okay.
maybe that's the latest data that I have. Yeah, so for CO2,
Yep.
that's the latest year. Maybe I do have CO2, not CO2, but temperatures or sea level.
Yep.
For last year. No, so sea level 2020, that's the last year. And then for temperatures, yeah, it's only temperatures that has data for 2025.
That makes sense. That's great. And one I had, you didn't specifically talk about it, but I was able to get the PBIX open before, and I had a look from accessibility features. I know we had Lakshmi previously present, and she mentioned a large criteria of these Global Viz challenges was about accessibility built in. I saw you did the tab order setup, the alt text for different visuals. Do you want to maybe just touch on that briefly? And then, yeah, if there's no further questions, we could probably close out on this session.
Yeah, sure. So accessibility was actually part of the judging criteria. So when I say accessibility, I mean choosing the right colors. I'm not very familiar with accessibility, meaning that I haven't designed for accessibility for quite a long time. So I might not be the best person to give you all the details.
Yeah,
but in terms of colors, you need to choose colors that have a certain contrast in between them. You can find a lot of online tools that are actually checking for this contrast. I think there are some like international guidelines on how to choose the colors. And then, of course, you would also have to respect people that have some, visual problems. So, for example, people that can't really differentiate between red and green. So that's why for the legend, instead of red and green, I've chosen blue and orange. So that's in terms of colors. Then in other areas, you need to set up the tab order. So basically, if you want to navigate the whole report using the keyboard, you would need to kind of arrange every single element in a certain order so that the reader can easily navigate using the keyboard alone. And then the last thing, if I remember correctly, is about setting up the alt text. So that's something that the screen reader is going to read out loud for visually impaired people. So it's basically, a description of what it is that you're showing. Now, Power BI, if I am correct, it does have, some kind of automatic alt text. So even if you don't, manually set it up, the screen reader will still, read your chart. But you still need to pay attention to some details. For example, the HTML chart. A screen reader, if I'm not mistaken, is going to read the actual HTML code behind the chart. So that's not going to be very useful for a reader. You need to adjust the alt text and manually put it in so it reads an actual text, not the HTML code.
Yeah. Could you just show quickly as well, just so you've got HTML content clicked on. So if you
Yeah,
open the visualizations
absolutely.
pane, so this is what Ruxandra is talking about. So under all the visualizations pane, under the general settings, there's an option for alt text, and you can either put in a static description, which I know you've done for some of those other visuals, but here you've obviously grabbed like a dynamic description to explain based on what I guess the HTML is pulling.
Yeah, exactly. So this measure is actually giving out the same result as the actual HTML measure, but it has no formatting, no HTML code. So it's something that the screen reader could actually read.
Yep. No, that's fantastic. No, look, thanks very much just for touching on that. I think it's something we discussed in the last month's session, and is an important element for our report design consideration. So thanks, Ruxandra. And just for the session in general, I got a lot out of it in terms of your thought process, visual selection, and I really liked all those guiding principles that you mentioned at the start. Things about white space, descriptive titles, and just making sure the end user actually understands, is not being misled by the way the data is presented. So no, that was a fantastic summary, and we had a lot of emojis and hearts and things sent out. So I think people on the call really, really enjoyed it as well. So thank you very much. If it's okay, appreciate people still staying on. I'll just share the screen back, Ruxandra, if that's all right, as the claps are coming in, which is great. So thanks, everyone. And I'll just wrap up this session. As it comes back. Cool. So just to close out, and there were a fair few questions on this, which I dropped in the chat. We'll make this available probably early next week on our YouTube recording, and obviously on the blog for the website as well. So thanks, Ruxandra, for allowing us to be able to do that and being able to share and distribute this session wider than everyone that dialed in today. And conversely, thanks everyone for dialing in and creating a really nice, robust environment and good engagement and questions along the way. We appreciate it, and it's how these sessions, I think we try and create them at a level that is very casual, very informal, and allows the speakers to present their information, but also get feedback, suggestions, and everyone just learning things along the way. That's kind of what we're really going for here. So thanks for making that possible during this session. As always, we're always looking for future sessions or future presenters. So if you do want to share your story, it can be very, very simple, very basic, or something a bit more advanced, feel free to get in touch. We're always looking for presenters. So thank you very much. And just lastly, thanks everyone for dialing in, no matter what your time zone and where you are in the world. And we spanned a fair bit over this this session. So if it's all right with everyone, I'll stop sharing. I'll stop the recording. I know there was one person with their hand up. Ruxandra, if you have to leave, that's fine. But otherwise, I'll stop the recording, and then whoever's got their hand up, I can try and answer your question if we need be. But thanks very much everyone for dialing in, and Ruxandra, especially to you for the really, really great session. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I do see that there's someone with the hands up. Is there a question?
Sure, go for it, Ruben. Yep.
Yeah, hi, Ruxandra.